Iroh was the greatest military commander in Fire Nation history. He laid siege to Ba Sing Se for 600 days. 600 days of fire and strategy and men who would die on his word. Then his son died on those walls. And Iroh walked away from everything. Not because he broke, because for the first time in his life, he understood what strength actually costs. You know this feeling. Not the dramatic kind of loss. Not the kind that gets sympathy. The quiet kind. You did everything right. You showed up. You worked. You gave someone or something everything you had. And it still fell apart. And the world kept moving. And nobody stopped to acknowledge what it cost you. And now you are standing in the wreckage of something you built carefully. Something that mattered. And the only question left is what kind of man you become after this. Most men get two options from the world around them. Harden. Close off. Build walls so thick that nothing gets through. Not the pain, not the pain, not the people, not the moments worth feeling. Become the man who needs nothing because needing things is how you get hurt. Or collapse. Disappear into the loss. Let it define everything that comes after. Both of these are reactions to the same fear. If I open again, I lose again. But here is what nobody tells you. The hardening is not strength. It is the most sophisticated form of surrender a man can choose. And Iroh chose neither. There is a mechanism that happens inside a man after serious loss. Psychologists call it hypervigilance. The armor trap. Your amygdala, the part of your brain that processes threat, recalibrates after trauma. It stops distinguishing between danger and closeness, between the thing that hurt you and the people standing in front of you now. The nervous system learns one lesson from loss and applies it everywhere. Don't trust. Don't open. Don't want things too much, because wanting is how the pain gets in, and the armor works. For a while, the numbness is genuinely more comfortable than the grief. The control feels like safety, the distance feels like wisdom, but the armor has a cost that compounds quietly. Every year inside it, you become less capable of the thing that made you worth knowing in the first place. Your presence, your warmth, your ability to sit with someone in their darkness without needing to fix it or leave. This is the armor trap. You don't choose it consciously. Your nervous system chooses it for you, and most men spend the rest of their lives inside it, fully functional, completely defended, and slowly disappearing from the inside. This looks like a wound with no exit. But there was a Roman emperor who lost 4 sons, watched his closest friends betray him, governed an empire that was falling apart at every border, and he left behind the only honest manual on how to carry grief without becoming it. Marcus Aurelius did not write the meditations for publication. He wrote them at night, for himself, after days spent sentencing men to death, negotiating with people who wanted him gone, burying children whose names history barely remembers. He was the most powerful man in the known world, and he was writing private notes to remind himself how to be a decent human being by morning. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But read that carefully. This is not motivation. This is not a poster for a gym wall. This is an operational instruction from a man who had already lost everything that instruction was meant to protect and kept writing it anyway, every night, because the alternative was the armor. And he had seen what the armor did to men like him. It made them Ozai. Iroh understood this without reading a word of Stoic philosophy. After Lu Ten died on the walls of Ba Sing Se, after Iroh lifted the siege that would have made him the greatest conqueror in history, he disappeared, not into grief, not into rage, into tea, into music, into the Earth Kingdom. he had spent years trying to destroy into the faces of people his nation considered enemies. He didn't brew tea because everything was fine. He brewed tea because everything was broken, and that small, deliberate act of care, repeated every day in the wreckage of everything he had lost, was the most radical thing a man of his power could do. A candle doesn't ask if the darkness deserves its light, it just burns. That is the image Iroh lived inside, not the general, not the conqueror, the man who kept the flame going, not because the world earned it, but because extinguishing it would have meant becoming someone he refused to be. Marcus Aurelius gave us the philosophy. Iroh lived it in every cup of tea he made for a stranger, but there is something neither of them prepared us for. The moment you choose to stay open after loss, you have to face the one thing the armor was built to protect you from: yourself. Here is the illusion that lives inside the armor. If I become strong enough, it won't hurt next time. If I control enough, I won't lose again. If I need nothing, nothing can be taken. Iroh was the strongest man in the Fire Nation. It didn't save his son. Strength has never been protection from loss. It was never designed to be. Think about what Ozai actually built. A son who trembled in his presence. A daughter who collapsed into madness. A nation that followed him out of terror and abandoned him the moment the fear was gone. He optimized for dominance his entire life. And at the end, in a prison cell, stripped of his bending, stripped of his title, there was nobody. Not because he was unlucky. Because every person who might have loved him had learned, correctly, that love was not safe around him. This is the final cost of the armor. Not that it fails to protect you from loss, but that it guarantees the specific loss that breaks men completely. The loss of being truly known by another person. And choosing never to risk that is the loneliest decision a man can make. The belief that power protects. That is the cage, not the loss itself. The right amount of control, the right amount of not needing, the right amount of strength. It will never be enough. And somewhere under the armor, you already know this. The armor isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you alone. Iroh had a teapot and an open door. Only one of them died, surrounded by people who genuinely loved him. Power without tenderness is not masculinity. It is a very expensive way to disappear. There is one move, not a program, not a list of virtues.
Iroh, your shop is a true haven
Iroh
tonight.
did not decide to become wise. He did not sit down one morning and resolve to be the pinnacle of masculinity. He made tea every day, in a prison cell, in a refugee camp, in a small shop in the middle city he once tried to conquer. He found one small thing he could do with full attention and care, and he did it. Especially on the days it felt pointless. Especially on the days it felt pointless. Especially in the darkness. Psychologists call this behavioral activation. The nervous system cannot distinguish between genuine feeling and deliberate action sustained long enough. The ritual creates the state, not the other way around. Iroh did not feel like a wise and loving man every morning. He made tea anyway, and over years, the man who made the tea became the man the tea required him to be. One question before you close this, not what you have lost. What is the one small thing you can do today with full attention, with genuine care, that has nothing to do with being seen or rewarded for it? That thing. Do it tomorrow. Do it the day after. That is where Iroh's strength came from. Not from becoming harder, from refusing, every single day, to stop being tender. Tell me one thing in the comments. Not your greatest achievement, the loss you are still carrying. Not because you are weak, but because it actually mattered. Iroh did not become the pinnacle of masculinity despite his grief. He became it because of what he chose to do inside it. Every day, in the dark, when nobody was watching. The tea was never just tea. It was proof that tenderness survives. It was a man saying, quietly, without audience, "I have not become what my pain wanted me to become. The candle is still burning. There is a man who received everything Iroh had to give. Every cup of tea, every patient word, every open door, and still chose the darkness." What that tells us about the people we refuse to give up on and what it costs, that room opens next.